Filmmaking and directing can be super daunting when you start, so here are my top tips that I've learned over the last 2 or 3 years. Framing and frame composition. Now maybe these words might sound alien to you, but they are really the bread and butter of filming and even photography, so really important to keep in mind. Framing, in my opinion, is an art of itself. If you haven't heard about the term yet, it's basically about how things are arranged in your frame, so in what you're recording. What does the camera see, what shot is used, etc. But more than that, framing can have a massive impact on what your audience thinks and feels when they see the video you create. Because framing can tell the story just as well as your dialogue would. And when you think framing, one of the first things that will come to mind and that you will learn is the so-called rule of thirds. Ultimately, the rule of thirds is there to help pull the audience into the scene that you are creating. So right now I'm just going to pop the rule of thirds on the screen so you can see exactly where I lined myself up. Basically, the rule of thirds is split into 9 parts on the screen. And you can see the lines across, like 2 diagonally and 2 vertically. And so what you really want to try is to put the focus of your scene on one of those vertical lines. Why is that, you might ask? Well, our brain and our eyes automatically are moving towards either side of the screen. So lining the focus of your scene on one of those lines, it's going to make it much easier for your audience to naturally feel pulled into the scene and focus on whatever the focus should be in the scene. But as we know, some rules are there to be broken, so the rule of thirds as well can be broken to create a different effect in the film. Because depending on where you place the focus of your scene, it will affect the emotion and the feeling that you will transmit to the audience watching. So me placed now on one of the vertical lines, it's really just to pull the audience in a bit. It's going to show a bit of the surroundings as well. What you could do, and let me move the microphone for this, you could put the focus more in the center. So right now I should be kind of in the center in between the 2 vertical lines. Now this framing is used a lot to create more tension. And funnily enough, it is also used a lot in comedic media. Using this framing can help show a bit more of the surroundings of the character and the place of the character in the scene. But you could also have it as a pleasing symmetrical shot, which can then be used to show loneliness. An example for that you would find in The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which I'd say is one of the best films out there to learn all about framing and framing composition. A centered shot could also show your character as more intense or dangerous. In general, sticking to the rule of thirds will create some beautiful shots and will just help your audience and your viewers because, as mentioned before, our eyes are automatically drawn to either side of the screen. But hey, don't be scared to break the rule if it helps your film and helps your scene transmit the emotion and the feeling that you want to transmit. Alright, next up we have to think about angles and the shots that we use. Here are just some of the most important shots used, but trust me, these are really just some. There's so many more. You have the extreme wide shot. Here I've got a still from Dune 2. The extreme wide shot is also more commonly known as the establishing shot, which, as the name says, just establishes the location of the scene. Then we have the wide shot, and here I've got a still from the film Game Night, which is a great film by the way. This shot is similar to the last one, but a bit closer to better show the characters in relation to their surroundings. Next up we have the medium or mid shot. Here I've got a still from the series The Last of Us. With this shot you get close enough to see some of the facial expressions and the body language, so it's often used and great for important dialogue scenes. Another important one here, we have the close-up. And here we have a still from the film Nightcrawler, which again is a brilliant film by the way. This shot is mainly used to clearly show the emotions of the character and heighten them, capturing the facial expressions clearly. This can be used greatly to build tension, be it in a solo or a dialogue shot. Similar to the last one, we have the extreme close-up. Do you want to heighten the emotions even more? Shifting the focus to the character and the character's reaction to whatever situation they're in. Here you can see a still from the film Split, and they use this shot really well in the film. By the way, if you haven't watched this one, go on and watch it. It is one of my favorites that has come out in the last few years. James McAvoy is just crazily good. But let's get back to the angles and shots. Alright, sorry, my camera turned off there for a second, so if the framing is a tiny bit different, that happens, it's all part of the job. Having talked about shots, we now need to talk about angles, because just as much as a shot can tell the story, an angle does the same thing. Let's go through the most common angles used. First up, we have the high angle, and you can see a still from the film Sicario. Now in general, the high angle is used to make the character appear small, isolated, less powerful or vulnerable. But, as with many other angles as well, it has more uses, so don't necessarily feel caged in to just use it for that scene. Next up, we have the low angle. And now, the high angle being there to show the character as weak or vulnerable. Guess what the low angle is for? Exactly. You can see in the still from Creed 3. This angle is used to make the character seem large and imposing, often daunting or shown to be more powerful. But again, this can be used in a variety of ways. Ultimately, what I've learned is that the variety of shots and angles that you can use, and that the variety of emotions and feelings that they can transmit really give you a huge amount of options to create whatever film you want to create. I'd say just be flexible with it and tell the film and the story the way you see it. Be unique. I mean, there's only one of you on Earth, so why would you try and copy someone else? Take inspiration, absolutely. Learn from others, yeah. But ultimately, what will make your film stand out is you. Next up, we have the other side of the coin. Now you have the filming, but then the other side of a good story is the writing. How often do I sit there with either no idea or an idea that I would need 10 million pounds to actually make it happen? All jokes aside though, writer's block is a well-known issue and it can be super frustrating. So I've got 3 tips here that I use to help me through that. Number 1. Word association. Now it's probably not what you think of at the moment, but it's similar to that. Do you know that game when somebody says a word and you have to say the first thing that comes to mind? So somebody goes red and you say blue. Something like that? This word association is a bit different though. Alright, my small rig light just went off again, but that's fine. Let's just keep going. Word association. So what I do is I create a list with an object, a situation, and a location. Then I think about that situation, object, and location with its normal characteristics. Like, the book has many pages to tell a story, or the woods are green and calming, or sitting at the beach brings peace and quiet. And now, you gotta flip it. Take what you wrote down and flip the normal characteristics to create something new. Like, the book's pages have been ripped out and there's only one page left and one word on it. Run. Or the colors of the woods are fading and an eerie humming breaks the silence that it once held. Or, going back to the beach, sitting on it doesn't bring any peace or quiet as you realize that the waters are rising and soon everything that you know might not be there anymore. Honestly, just have fun with it. Go crazy if you'd like. It is such a simple thing, but twisting something normal and well known can create a great story. Because then people would be like, oh yeah, I wonder what that would be like if that would be normality. Number 2, public places. The last few years have been crazy, right? And it doesn't really seem like this craziness is gonna leave us anytime soon. So how about going to a cafe, ordering a nice hot or cold drink, sitting down, take out your laptop, your notepad, whatever it may be, relax, and then just listen to the stories being told around you. Now obviously, don't just be like listening in to someone talking in private. But many people these days don't really worry about being heard, which gives us as filmmakers a great opportunity. You listen to people talking and then there's always some stories that come up that can be really well used for films. So like, oh what, your purse got stolen and a knight in shining armor came and wrestled the bad guy down and brought the purse back to you. That could be made into a film. Or, I see, so when it rains, your house makes very strange noises and you feel like you're not alone anymore? Well, that's a good idea for a film. Honestly though, sometimes there's like one single sentence that can fuel a great idea for a really good film. So try it. Number 3, go outside. Take your camera and go, be it places that you know really well or places that you want to explore. Try seeing spots through your camera's lens and let the scenery inspire you. To be honest, that is one of my favorite ways to gain ideas, because there will always be one or two spots that inspire a story in you. It's like, oh yeah, this alley really just needs two fugitives running away and figuring out the plan to escape the country. Or this field would look great for a scene where a victim of a failed break-in tries to escape the criminals. I remember not so long ago meeting up with some friends, taking the camera and going to the woods for a walk. As we walked together, enjoying the sunshine, chatting and everything, we came across this really interesting, unique looking tree. And so we stopped and I thought, oh, do you know what? That would look really good for a scene. I didn't really know what scene yet, but I just thought this looks really cool. So I asked one of my friends if he'd be okay to be a makeshift actor for the moment. And we created this scene. What the heck? Just because the tree looked really interesting. From that moment, the ideas just flowed and we continued throughout the woods, finding different spots where we could create this story that we came up with on the spot. And from that, it turned into 3 hours of us shooting a short film, which I haven't released, but maybe in the future.
Nico? I thought you were dead.
Next up, something really important. Now, depending on the film idea you have, you will need actors. Now, these actors might just be your friends.
Oh. There you are.
Or they might be actual actors or actors that are just getting started in the industry. And you have to direct them. That can be a tough task. Actors can be really tricky at times. Some just get straight into it, no issues at all. Others will have a lot of opinions and want to change the story that you've created. And you know what? That doesn't necessarily have to be bad. Yeah, it is your story and ultimately you have to decide how this story plays out. But allow your actors a bit of space to improvise and bring their own flavor to the character you created for them. I've come to understand, be it by being around actors, directing them, acting together, directing my friends, that the actor can bring really good twists to the story that you've created that you haven't thought about before and that would improve the story overall. Now, I'm not saying let them rewrite the whole story you created, but give them a bit of space to bring some of themselves into that story, because that's really when an actor shines. Next up, 3 words. Try, try, try. Whenever you have free time, take your camera and record. Try different places, try different angles and shots. Try and see how the audio plays out in different locations and try and understand how you can get the best audio out of those locations. If you have no one to come with you and be an actor, then just be the actor yourself and do a bunch of different static shots and try different angles and framings on there. Or you could just record nature or cars passing by or whatever. Just go out and try. When you have the time, use it. Because when the day comes and you have the chance to record a film, all these moments of recording even just on your own or recording a tree from different angles will help you out massively, trust me. Another one here, really important. Don't just accept excuses. I know for a fact from myself that so often I think, oh, this story isn't good enough, or I don't have a good location for that, or I'm missing the actors, or I need better equipment. There's a bunch of excuses that we can come up with that will then stop us and hinder us from actually moving forward. What I've realized is that most of the times when I'm finding an excuse, this excuse is really just there because I'm scared of not being good enough. Well, top tip here, the more you try, the more you learn. The more you learn, the better you get. The better you get, the better films you create. I know that these thoughts and worries don't necessarily disappear all the time, but the important thing is to just push through and keep going. Now, last but not least, the most daunting point on this list, feedback. I know this one can be hard, but it is so important. Get feedback from people. Whatever you create, show it to someone, be it friends or family, be it at a festival. Whenever you have the chance to get feedback. Because trust me, when you spend hours, days, weeks, months, or even years working on a project, there are 2 things that can happen. Number 1, you absolutely love what you created and there's no chance anybody wouldn't. fair enough. I'm glad you feel that way, and I wish with all my heart that everybody else will think the same way about your project as you do. But what happens so often when we fall madly in love with the project we created without getting any feedback is that we kind of put the project in a box and nobody can say anything against it because we see it one way and whoever says differently is wrong. Basically, we have all the scenes, the dialogues, the story and whatever so embedded in our hearts and minds that we don't think anyone could have a better idea or improve it, which oftentimes ends up leaving our film being not as good as it could be. Now, I'm not saying that just because you love your project so much, it's not going to be as good as it could be. Not at all. What I'm saying is that it is important to get feedback because there might be parts of the project, parts of the film that you love so much that you really can only imagine them that way. And when somebody else comes along, they might be able to point something out that just doesn't really resonate with the audience and then help you to improve it so that it resonates with the audience better. Number 2, and I think this is the most common one, at least for me, is that we hate our film or our project. And the disappointment leads us to end the project and working on the film, which means we might be leaving a perfectly good film or perfectly good idea in the mud and forget about it. I get this feeling way more often than number 1. Getting feedback usually helps realizing that your film is maybe not as good as you think it is and it needs some improvement, or that your film is much better than you think it is and encourages you to keep working on it or publishing it. So whenever you can, try and get some feedback. If it's from someone you trust, or if it's at a showing, in public, whatever. Just try and get some feedback. It will do you lots of good, no matter the outcome. So these are the top tips and experiences that I've come across so far. So yes, please, just keep on working on your film, keep on working on your project, keep believing, put in the effort, and don't give up. At the end of the day, if it's good or not, it will help you grow, and the next one will be even better. That's it from me. I hope you guys have a good day, evening, night, whatever time it is where you're at, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.